Hey guys, welcome back. Glad you're here. Today we are going to be working on bows. I've got a couple of different techniques and they are super easy. They do not require bow tools and twisting and turning and cramping cans. So we're just going to make it super simple and off we go. Start with just our ribbon still on the spool. We'll scrunch some up, measure it out 12 inches and scrunch that up. Then measure out another 12 inches. Scrunch that up. Now you have a little single bow or single loop bow. And we're going to make a double loop bow here. It always confuses me. I go with how many loops are on one side. So this is a 2-loop bow or a 4-loop bow. Tell me in the comments, what would you call it? 2 loops, 4 loops. But that's it. It's that easy. You just measure out 12 inches and bring it to the center. Put a little pipe cleaner around it. And then just cut it off. When I make my tails, I always do them at the end and do them separately. Because if people have dexterity issues with their hands, or it's really, when you add tails, it's just a lot to deal with. So making it in bite-sized pieces makes it a little more manageable. Now this particular technique, I measured out 26 inches and cut it. And then find the center, put that on one of the lines, and then you just overlap 1 inch on each side. So basically, if you find your center point, put it on the 14-inch grid line. You're going to overlap the end onto 13 and then the other end to 15. That way you get a 1 inch overlap on both sides. 26 inches, find your center point, overlap it 1 inch on each side. And the beauty of this technique is you can lay the bow kind of how you want it in the end. And so you don't really have to do a whole lot of fluffing and moving loops around because they're pretty much where you wanted them to be to start with. And this being a 3-loop bow, usually I like having one at the top, one at the bottom, and one in the center. Now, I didn't show you on the other one because I show you here to make a little center loop. You can just cut off 7, 8, 9, 10 inches, just however big you want that loop, and then just squish the 2 ends up, put them together, and then attach them to the pipe cleaner. And guys, seriously, bow making can be that easy. I did want to show you here, the middle loops are kind of even with the center loop, and here you can see I moved them to the back. I just rearranged what was on top and what was on bottom. But sometimes I don't like it to look like one piece straight across. So I want that separation between those loops. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, message me or comment and I'll work on it. This one I did the exact same thing. Just cut 26-inch sections. And then here I was going to make my little center loop. I don't always go by how long in this. When it's a pattern bow, I will pick out what I want to be more prominent in the center and then work around that. And what I like about this method also is you don't end up with anything upside down. You can make sure everything is right side up. And then you can use coordinating ribbons, or you could just continue with the same ribbon. But I usually, after I get 3 loops on each side, I'll go down to a 5-inch loop. And that's what I did with the yellow and the pink. Just did 24 inches. And then when you overlap the inch, you end up with 2 5-inch loops. And you could keep going on this bow and actually come back with maybe some 4-inch loops of the spring ribbon. But you get a lot going on in this situation like that. But it depends on your project. Now this one, I'm doing 1.5-inch ribbon. And you can see when I make my loop, I'll move that hand that's holding it sometimes to the top, and then sometimes I don't. So you just do what feels comfortable for you. I started to cut it off, and then I thought, no, I really do want to get a 3rd loop of this white as a base. But you see how my hand is on top there, and I bring it over, and sometimes I will just leave it on the bottom, but then you have to loop underneath, and it's a little more difficult. So here we have 3 loops, and then I went ahead and did the same thing with the red. And then the beauty of it, you just start stacking it on top. And that's where you really have so much control on how many loops, how big the loops, how big you end up making the bow in the end. Now here I just cut off a little piece for my center, and I just started adding those bundles to that center. Just put a piece of pipe cleaner and then just start adding them in. And if you're like me, you can't help but fluff as you go. You really can just wait till the end, but I just have to. Now here I show you how I do tails. Now this one, because it has so many loops, it has a lot of tails. And I am in some crazy fad right now that I just love curly tails. I used to never do that, but I did a couple for Christmas and they were so pretty. So yep, you can just wind it up and then pull it down and get your little curlies. Now in this case, I usually cut the ends at a slant or just straight across when I'm curling the ribbon like that. Normally I do a dovetail. I will also, if I have a wreath that I'm making a bow for, I will put the tails on the wreath and then put the bow on top of it. And that just gives you a little more control. Here I don't really have a project I'm working on, so I just made it together like that. But that's it, guys. I mean, again, these are super easy bows to make. What you have to remember is just make things in bite-sized pieces, and then it's not overwhelming. Thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.